All right, next we will look at some graphical output. And I decided to use the same little function, sine x divided by x. And this is the program here. This one animates sine x over x with zoomability. And I'll have you try your hand at this, but I have to say it is going to mostly be a cut and paste and then change a little bit of the program in order to see that it works on your computer. Um, there's a lot in this one that you could learn more about the options for how to set it up because it does actually animate this. It also gives some different input as well as output as usual for JavaScript. So here I'll run it. When you run this program, it pops up little boxes to ask you for input. And so it says enter your X radius, distance from 0 to start. And that is asking for where you want to graph your function. So I suggest the value of -17, and I'll just leave it and hit OK. And then it asks for a zoom, and I suggested 30, although you can then zoom from 50 to 500. I'm guessing 30 is a little small, so I'll change it to 50 and see what that does. The point size in pixels is when it's going to actually graph the points in the function, and I'll just leave that at 6. And then we'll see what it looks like. So sure enough, it graphs the value of sine x over x. A little bit not centered. I think the zoom 30 would center it more. All right, let's look and see what the source looks like for this. Notice that it actually graphed it as an animation so that you could see the points popping up onto the screen. You can change things in this program to make that go slower, faster, make it so that it leaves the track of the animated plotted points or just shows you the motion of one point and erases the previous ones. Here's the source. This is a large amount of cut and paste. I'll run through some of the features of an animated JavaScript output and how I did those little input boxes. But for the most part, you'll cut and paste it and you'll change the function value, the actual function math. Instead of sine x over x, you'll have to change it to the new function I gave you in the quiz. So yeah, at the top, it has something called animate, which is a window request animation frame. It has some values that are adjust the timing of how frequently it reanimates the picture. And then it creates a variable called canvas that creates an element of your document called canvas, and it has a width and a height that we'll assign to it later. Here's the inputs. So this part is something you can add easily to any JavaScript program. Instead of using those either input boxes for onClick or the get element by ID for getting the value of that, you can use a prompt. You just can define a variable to be, and there's 3 numbers, num1, num2, num3, and num4 for some reason. The prompt says first a text in single quotes, which is telling you what you're supposed to enter, and then a comma, and then a suggested value in single quotes, which actually goes into the the box where it's going to be input. Then there's the same thing, same format, but for the zoom, and the same format, but for the point size in pixels. And then it writes what you've entered, the -17 starting x value is what came up, and then creates floating point out of each of those 3 numbers that we entered. And then comes the math. So there's a couple of kinds of math here. First, there's a setup of the canvas math, and you can leave this without changing a thing. even though it uses the math.sin x divided by x as a part of the process, it won't really be too different if you leave it when you when you create your new version with a new function. You can change the function here from math.sin x if you'd like. But the whole point of this section is to just set up the canvas, and it calculates a shift and a couple of shifts and the zoom, and then sets the canvas width to width and the canvas height to height. In fact, I'm not even sure if we use those. Oh yeah, we do use the X shift and the Y shift later on when we start plotting points. So, all right, that's some initial calculation for setting up the canvas and the shifting of the plot based on the zoom that person inserts. And then there's three portions that actually run this: the update, the step, and then at the very bottom the word animate step, which refers back to the thing at the top, which is a variable animate that does the animation frames. So the words animate, step, and update are pretty commonly used, but you can change those and it would still work. There's a statement at the very bottom that needs to be done, which attaches to the canvas, which is our background blank page, to the body of the website, and then calls animate step. And so all those things are just cut and paste exactly the way they are, and then you can decide how much you want to change the function and its output. When it calls the step function, the first thing it does is plot the first point, and it plots. I decided to play with it, make it plot different kinds of points. For x values that are smaller than 0, it does a couple of things. First, it does a stroked rectangle, which means that it's just the outline, a little box with an empty hole in the middle. And the stroke style is actually the color. So this color code, pound FF0000, is hexadecimal code for 256 colors, and it's all red. Later, if X is not less than 0, then I changed the color to have some blue and green, and I did a filled rectangle instead of a closed rectangle. And this plots the first X value and the first Y value with some shift and zoom, which I played with to make it look nice, but you can definitely change those numbers. They're mostly just trial and error, this 1.9 and 600, to shift it around a little bit to make it plot nicely. Then it calls update. So what update does is it makes a new X value, which is actually just equal to the old X value plus 0.1 to shift over just a little bit, and calculates a new Y value from that. Then it does output to the console as well, so you can see the actual values of these. And but after calculating that, the update is done, and the next thing is called by animate. But it calls it first it animates, which refreshes the background screen, and then calls itself. So it calls itself over and over. So this will run forever. This animate calls step, and it background updates the background, and then redraws a new dot over and over and over. So back to the program real quick to see what it looks like again. I'll just use the suggested values this time. There's the picture, and if you want to see the console output, it actually will still be going under Tools and Developer Tools in Chrome. Yeah, there's nothing to stop this function from running. It's going to continue running forever. I didn't put in a stop value. So it's still calculating the sine x over x for x equals 100, 120, 130. The only way to stop it is to turn this off and then let you try it.